It was called Rent Will.
Rent will. Okay.
Because there was a game that used to be famous at the time called Farm Will. It's definitely product market fit in your home country. So it will just
That should be a
reinforce
good
what
tick
he
point.
said.
Yeah.
And only then you're ready for international expansion because the product works. And I guess one of the things is cost of expansion is one of the biggest things.
Gaining all of that takes so much time away and focus from where founders can be better spending their time, which is building a great product and building it across regions. So there's a lot that they could do. We take care of some of the intricacies and some of in the mature market.
I want to say all of them have said that, where have you been all my life? Because the problems that we speak to or the problems that we are trying to solve are problems that they face on a daily basis. So we've validated that.
Yeah. The amount of innovation that's coming out of India, I think just the community is just very passionate, and there's no challenge too small or too big that the teams have not been wanting to tackle and take on. So I think it's just a hunger for growth.
All right. Hi, guys. Hi, how are you?
Hey.
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this and welcome to India, both of you. I think it's been a tremendous trip. I heard many stories about you traveling all the way from Chennai to Bangalore.
Yes, it was a very interesting journey.
In a car, which didn't go very well. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm
hey,
glad you made it. I mean,
got to see a lot of the countryside, which was always good.
I mean, you have seen this more so, but then how's coming back to India after so long? Feels like.
It feels good. This is the longest I've stayed away from India. Yeah,
Yes,
because I was away for 10 months. I usually try and make 2 to 3 trips a year.
Interesting. And this is your first time?
Second.
This is second time? Okay.
Yeah, second time. So no, it's been a great experience as always. Love the culture, and people are very kind and welcoming.
Yeah,
and have eaten a lot of really good food.
Yeah, I've heard that you're quite a foodie, so I'm sure.
Packing on the pounds, that's for sure.
I'm sure. I mean, Miami heat will burn it back.
Yeah, exactly.
That will
exactly.
just be fine. But great. I mean, really love the kind of experience that you guys are bringing back here in the country, and the community that you are actually talking to and helping is super awesome. I think what you do, and we'll come to that very specifically, is one of the greatest or the most in-demand service that or consulting that people are really chasing here in India, right? You are actually right there what people actually need in this startup ecosystem. That's my personal feeling, right? Let's quickly jump into, first of all, your passion towards working with startups. Just a good story from you would be nice in terms of what's your background in terms of startup working has been like, and what's the most exciting thing about your background? Any of them can start at the beginning. Yeah, let's start with you. Yeah, let's go. Let's give it a shot.
Okay, this can go really long, so I'm going to give you the short version.
Please.
But I've been in startups for as long as I can remember because I even was working in a startup while I was in college doing my engineering.
Right. Too early, huh?
Yeah, because I had to make some pocket money. And then in my final year project, I thought that if I'm doing a project, might as well launch it as a business. So I started something similar to housing.com, which was...
Okay. Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is connecting tenants to property owners.
Wow, okay.
It started as a Facebook group, and then we migrated it to a website.
Okay.
We
What
did quite a
it
few transactions.
I'm sure. What did it call?
It was called Rent Will.
Rent will. Okay.
Because there was a game that used to be famous at the time called Farm Will, if you guys remember.
Yeah, Facebook, yeah.
Yeah. So it was Rent Will, and then I think there was in general my family was pushing me towards more of a secured job, so I just took the first job I found. Wasn't happy, and so then I just went back to startups. So been an entrepreneur 3 times before this.
Right.
If Rent Will counts, because we didn't
It does
raise or
count.
anything.
Doesn't matter how small or big, it does count, yeah.
And I've done a variety of roles, from development to product management to sales to QA to testing to coding to everything. So life has come a full circle.
Yeah, a lot of hats, I believe. Yeah. And it's been an exciting journey. I heard that you have done a couple of exits in your previous startups. Small, big doesn't matter, but they are
Yeah, I think for the time they were a decent size. I was able to buy a house in Mumbai,
Then it is a good exit. Yeah.
which I think is not a bad exit,
Not at all. Not at
debt
all.
free,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
of course.
Full cash. So I think it's good. I was
Right.
happy.
Yeah, no, that seems like a great
And I was
exit.
able to fund my Indian wedding as well with.
That is more expensive, I guess. That sounds crazy. What about your love for
I'll
startups?
be a little more brief than Leena here. No, I've actually came up in the corporate environment, so really never had startups on my radar. So I took your traditional path after university and started working for different companies. Landed in a global logistics company where I was given the opportunity to start looking at ways to disrupt the business from within. And so as a result of that, I was able to then engage the startup ecosystem to look at different and innovative solutions that were being introduced in the market and how I can bring those into what's just naturally a very conservative organization. And so I got a taste. I wanted to see how the companies worked. Just by being a client, I got to see the speed, the agility, the passion, the hunger. And so that immediately brought me into this world. And so I spent a lot of time really leveraging that large corporate experience and helping startups transform themselves, right? So as you guys all know, the process, right, from seed to just get a product that works, identify product market fit, start selling it to a few customers, and then how do you really pivot your organization from focusing on SMBs into enterprise? And so, because I was buying on behalf of enterprise, I know the language, I know the process, I know the governance, and so that really helped me guide these organizations to really not only pivoting their sales strategy but also their organization structure to be able to really capture a larger part of the market. So that's really led me to working with startups and growth roles. So how do we transition and pivot into new lines of business? How do we go into new market segments? And really how to invest and where to invest from a product innovation standpoint to meet the needs of the market. So.
And now that you have obviously been part of multiple regions and been in charge of expanding business to multiple continents altogether, you're here in India. What do you think about Indian startup ecosystem altogether from an outside point of view?
Well, I've been working in the ecosystem for a few years now, so I think the amount of innovation that's coming out of India, I think the community is just very passionate, and there's no challenge too small or too big that the teams have not been wanting to tackle and take on. So I think it's just a hunger for growth, a hunger for access,
right.
The desire to create globally relevant solutions. So that's generally the common theme. And what Leena and I really do is try to help chart the course, right? How do you go into either other emerging markets or mature markets?
Right.
And so I know we'll get into that in a little bit later, but certainly it's a community that wants to learn, wants to grow, wants to evolve, and that makes it a pleasure to work with.
Yeah. What's your take on? I mean, you obviously have built companies and sold them as well, but I'm sure you get every now and then you do get introduced to what's happening in the startup ecosystem and in the context. How does it make you feel?
Absolutely. So yeah, my startup experiences have gone back from the e-cell days.
Right.
You have entrepreneurship cells in engineering colleges all over the country.
Yeah.
And I had access to the one in IIT Bombay. So that was almost, and I've been in touch with them even now in some capacity for the last 15, maybe 20 years. I've had some sort of access to them, right? So it has evolved so much. It used to be more of a
side project.
A side project that people would just do something
club,
and they would raise some funding, or they had to really ask for funding, and it wasn't pretty. And now to the era where VCs were chasing after founders, and then now it's a good balance. So I've seen it evolve through those stages.
So let's jump into what exactly is the current trend, or today what does it look like for Indian startup ecosystems, right? We are building global. I personally feel India and Indian startups are building global products, global services, innovating globally as well, right? And what I personally also have seen is the challenges that they face. In India, if you're doing business for India, it's challenging well enough for the same country. But if you really have to get out of India and start expanding yourself after a certain point of time, I assume, but sometimes you just start from day one for a global market, right? Considering some categories at least. How do you see that in the perspective of somebody wants to get out of the country as part of expanding to newer market? For the context, let's just say US for now, right? What are the top challenges you personally have seen in your journey with Indian startups that they face there?
Yeah, I think my international career started with international expansion of
Right.
especially SaaS companies, right? So some of the challenges are, usual challenges that any business would face, which are related to cultural barriers and pricing strategies and also local competition.
Right.
And not just cultural barriers, but also sometimes language barriers. So those are the basic challenges.
Basics.
And I think people are prepared for them. But then once you're in the new markets, there are, unforeseen challenges that one
Yes.
would also face, right? A lot of that is also because Indian, while there is an aspiration to build global, build for the world, as they say, build for the world. It really doesn't, it's kind of like starting up again all over again when you
Every
start
region
in
is a
any
new-
region,
yeah.
even if it's the US. In fact, especially the US, it's like starting from all over again. And I've spoken to multiple founders who've told me that they felt like they were back in their ideation and other days, because while they may have achieved the product market fit in a certain market, maybe India, Asia, etc., it's not the same in the US. So they have to kind of go back to the drawing board, maybe make some adjustments to their products, or hire consultants, advisors, move themselves. A lot of that happens because they need to. It's almost like starting up all over again.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I think product market fit is really number one, right? I think a lot of it is, I always tell founders, it's the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
80% of what you build is applicable globally.
Okay.
It's that 20% that is going to solve specific regional challenges, which then allows you to really define your niche in that particular market, right? So every market's different from a competitive landscape. Every market's going to be different, from the problems that they have. Whether that is, driven by macro considerations or constraints, whether that is specific industries are further along on the curve in e-commerce adoption, for example, than others. And so it's really sitting down, like Leena said, starting from scratch. It's, what are we selling? How are we selling it? And to who are we selling it? And so those are the questions that we really typically will go through. And we will find more often than not that we need to either pivot, maybe some of the, not just the messaging, but even the solution itself. And so how do we really understand all of those barriers rather than just showing up and spray and pray, as a friend of mine once said earlier today. And so so just being a little bit more intentional and thoughtful. And so I think that whole journey is required in order for you're not to waste time. And I think that's one of the things that Leena and I aspire to do, and why we do what we do is because we want to waste time. We've seen the movie before. We know how it ends, right? We know when the killer's behind that car, so don't go there. And so that's where we want to make sure that we're just helping folks navigate through are going to be inevitable hurdles, just simply because they don't have the experience.
I get it. And in your experience, do you think there are certain category of companies or sectors of companies can do faster global expansion than others altogether? But let's just, for the sake of conversation, say you're working with a SaaS company, easier to scale it to the global platforms. Is there a typical point that you consider that, okay, this is the right moment that you should get international? While you can get international from day one, but generally if in a trajectory of a startup, right, they should have a product market fit, at least in the Indian context, should be in the revenue state. How would you suggest and advise someone saying that you are primarily ready to go to an international market? Yeah,
I mean, you hit it, product market fit. There's actually customers, there's testimonials, there's really advocacy that's built in your home region.
Right.
Secondly, it's really the infrastructure. Do you have the product teams? Do you have the back office? Do you have the key players that can quickly adapt to meet market needs. Some folks will very bare bone organizations. They don't have a lot of product. They don't have a lot of engineering, and then just being able to deploy resources really quickly and operate in a more agile environment to start gaining traction in new markets. That's typically what I'll look for and the questions that I'll ask. And then obviously, do you have the bank account to do it? Because you can, it's very costly to go into a new market. We help try to solve that barrier. But still, nonetheless, investment is required. And so willingness to really want to deploy investment and not think you can be a hero and do everything from your home country, I think is some of the tougher discussions that we tend to have with founders.
Do you have a take on that?
I mean, pretty much the same, but it's definitely product market fit in your home country. So it will just reinforce what he said.
Yeah.
And only then you're ready for international expansion because the product works. And I guess one of the things is cost of expansion is one of the biggest things.
Do you think people misjudge that as a factor, cost of expanding to international markets?
No, I think founders are very well aware, and that's why they either start too early or start too late, or enter too late. I have come across journey of a startup that entered, one of their biggest markets super late in their journey, and so that kind of caused different kinds of challenges. While they had money in the bank, the international regions were full of competition, and so that adds to the cost because now you have competition to deal with, so
burn more.
Customer acquisition costs rise up significantly.
You seem to be focusing a lot more on the timing of almost everything that startup has to do with regards to their international expansion, right? So that's one of the key and a crucial thing that you always try to pick with startups. Like, what time are you really getting into?
Yeah, like everything in life, right?
Like everything in life, yes.
Timing is everything.
Timing is almost everything. Awesome. I think that sums it up. So if there is a company who's, according to you, is the right time to go to an international market, right? How one should start, say, with you? Or where does your initial interactions come in play, and what does that look like, and how do you identify in your first initial discovery meetings that if this is the right company to go for?
Yeah, I mean, we typically will start with a light engagement, just to try to understand the company's DNA, try to better understand the founders, leadership, et cetera, just to know, are you guys poised to be able to do this? We'll look at the product, we'll do some light market research, and get comfortable whether we can be successful, right? Do you have the core to actually to be relevant? I think that's the main word that Leena was looking for too, is just making sure that we're solving relevant problems, or can we get to the point where we're solving relevant problems? So that's typically how we will we'll do that initial review to gain that understanding, and then be able to set out, right, what are the reasonable expectations that we can at least begin committing to from a larger engagement perspective. And then from there, we typically will look at what is our revenue strategy, what are the resources that we need. Do we need to do a lot of work on the marketing side? Is there already an existing marketing team that can help us? How do we begin to drive brand awareness, garner design partners to get a little bit of instant credibility into the market? And so we begin to really start formulating a plan specific for that customer. We're not making widgets, so it's not the same. It's not one plan.
Can never be. At least in your line of business, I really doubt it can be templatized in any form.
Yeah. As much as we'd love to say that we can, we cannot. Every engagement, everyone's going to be a bit different. You're dealing with people, right? So it's going to be
different product. I mean, they in different country products, so it's a huge mix.
Exactly. So a lot of the work that we try to be very. I keep using the word thoughtful, but we don't want to just say, hey, we're going to put a few salespeople on the street for you. There you go, right? So
isn't that what the founders' first thought is? That, if you want to expand to US, let me just get two
Everyone
guys.
reverts back to that, and you'll find, and I go back to saving time, because I've seen clients that will invest $7-figure dollars, deploy them for a country. Wow. They'll have bad hires because cultural differences and not really understanding. If you can't join that company culture and you have people feeling that they work in a silo in an island, you're not going to have that same passion and buy-in that a lot of folks in country already possess. So you want to make sure that you're building the right team, you have the right onboarding, the right processes. You'd be surprised how many old colleagues and contacts I have that have joined startups, and they're like, I don't have anything to do for the first month. They just gave me a bunch of videos, and I'm supposed to expect it to learn the product, learn how things work, and then go at it and be effective, and that's really just not possible. So those are the things that that typically are challenges that we try to avoid and mitigate, and do so in a way that we're leaning on the skill sets within our team. Right, we have people that focus on marketing, we have people that focus on brand, we have people that focus on product strategy, and so we try to put all the pieces together. So we know exactly how to hit the ground running, and so that's typically the exercise that we'll undertake. And again, would be great and easy if it could be done from India into the U.S., but you just have to know the markets, have to know the people, have to have the company contacts. Just gaining all of that takes so much time away and focus from where founders can be better spending their time, which is building a great product. Building it across regions. So there's a lot that they could do. We take care of some of the intricacies and some of in the mature market.
A lot of people have this notion or misconception about, okay, I want to enter international market, let me hire 2 guys, right? That's what we were talking about. And these guys will become my primary BDs. I will show them a months-long videos to talk about the product, and he will be educated enough to go and talk to my ICPs, and the business will start flowing. That's the general sense of thought. But things go really south when as you mentioned, the culture, the team, everything doesn't fit so well. In your opinion, how should someone really evaluate on getting the right person? And if you do get a right person, what's the approach after getting him? How much time you should give it to him? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I want to take 2 steps back and think from go into the founder's head, right? When they are thinking of US expansion, first of all, at least technology founder has the aspiration to expand into the US. At times, they build with US in their mind. That being said, while they put an effort in terms of building the product, they don't really think about GTM as much and other aspects of growth into the US market.
Right. So the founders GTMs are very local all the time.
Exactly. And the founder's mind thinks a few things, takes a couple of approaches. One is move.
Yeah.
So
at least there are 2 founders, one of them.
Yeah, 2, 3 people. One founder has to move. Investors push for that. Founders.
Investors definitely push for that.
Think about doing that themselves as well, and it makes sense because then something that he was touching upon earlier. Then you can bring a little bit part of your culture, and then whatever team you expand, they can kind of derive from that culture that the founder can establish or re-establish in a new market. So that's one.
Good, yeah.
Second is the 1 foot here, 1 foot there, let's see what happens approach, which is, the approach that he was again talking about, hiring 1 to business development persons or salespeople, not training them enough and see what happens approach. And that is the most I think, in my opinion, dangerous approach. That is the worst approach that they can take. The third approach is, the strategic approach, align with good advisors, partners, consultants, or maybe people are lucky that, the initial team that they've hired turns out to be good. But, nobody has, at least at that stage of a company, they don't have enough money or they don't want to invest as much to be able to create a full-blown team.
Right.
And so the third approach, more often than not, is it's coming up now, but it's not really in terms of hiring advisors and external consultants. It's kind of coming up, but it's usually one of the first 2. The founder moving to the US approach works if that's something that you want me to expand on, but then it also breaks your core team, right? Because one of the founders moving halfway across the world breaks the team in some ways. There's a lot of loss that the company has to face locally, and then they have to find a way to bridge that gap that has been now created. Secondly, a lot of the Indian founders increasingly are not interested in moving to the US.
Yes, nowadays, no.
It has been a trend that
Absolutely.
we've been hearing about it from a lot of founders. And so it seems to me that even if they do move, they usually have a term in mind.
Yep. 2 years,
2 years, 3 years tops, and they extend up to 5 in most cases, and then they go back.
I mean, so is there a reason, because maybe after a point of time you can manage things more digitally, you don't need feet on the ground? Is there one, is it the case? But at the time that we can actually start going to global market more, if it's a SaaS or a digital tech company, then you think having a feet on the street helps?
Absolutely. You have to be in tune with the market. So
Right.
I always think voice of customer is critical. As you know, in SaaS, once you build the base, a lot of your incremental revenue is going to come from growth. And so really building those relationships, understanding those businesses, knowing how they operate, how they purchase, what initiatives they have, what are opportunities that you can create in your product and IP as a result of having industry exposure and experience. Those are things that are very difficult to do from afar. You have to be in market. You have to
So
understand.
localization has to be part of your GTM strategy.
It is. Otherwise, I just don't do it. Right. I think the problem becomes where the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, hiring a couple of people. I've seen it fail more often than not, and that's just taking a very budget conscious approach, and I certainly understand that. But if you're going to go, you got to go.
Right.
And so that's where this third option, or that Leena was mentioning, comes into play, because it's really all about getting from 0 to 1.
Right.
Right. So how do you then begin to have a sales motion, customers, really some validation in the market? That's that 0 to 1 journey. Once you hit that 1, you know how to sell. You know who you're selling to. So then hiring people, training them, onboard, now you're doing it with a little bit more precision. And then that allows those folks to be more successful. And then you now have that motion in place. And then that's when you can go from 1 to 10.
Right.
0 to 1 is where folks waste a lot of time and a lot of money. And
Right.
that's where we feel there's the biggest opportunity for us to help. We don't want to be in there for very long, because we want to move on. We certainly want to help companies in other ways, such as fundraising, expansion into additional markets, et cetera. So that's where we want to spend our time. So when we have a motion in place and it's working and we know it's repeatable and it's, more importantly, it's predictable, then that's when I think is the right time to bring in
I love
those
your
folks.
team. I mean, it's money and market. I see that you guys speak of that more often. And if I really look at it, a company or a consulting group which actually solves for one, getting into a new market, and actually also getting into a new market from a capital raise perspective. That's the best combination a startup founder can actually look for, right? So you get a marketer and a banker on board as a
Yeah, they're
as a
usually not in the
consultant.
same room too often, but but no, we feel that it has to work together.
Absolutely.
These, as we mentioned earlier, it's a significant investment.
Yeah.
And we want to work with founders that acknowledge that and are motivated by doing things the right way.
Right.
And so having the money side complement it is certainly the means that you need to actually execute the plan.
Right.
And so that's really what we want to center around is bring in all of the services, bring in transaction advisory, valuations, growth strategy, plans, et cetera, so we can secure
I mean,
that
it's
fund.
as you mentioned in your previous conversation, it's first of all, it's a capital requirement to get into a new market, and you should be ready with a decent capital if you want to do it. Otherwise, don't waste.
Yeah,
your
don't waste
money,
the time.
right? And time. More often, I think people misjudge, or sometimes they don't as well, that how much money really a new market expansion can cost, right? Maybe it's just even deploying people or even deploying a digital strategy. I think both are expensive
Yep.
in that sense. In some random conversations, I had this with one of the investors, and mentioned if you want to go into a market, an international market at any given point of time in your career of your company, have $1 million for per market. If you want to go to US, have 1 million. You want to go to Europe, have another million ready for it. Otherwise, don't even try. I'm not very hell-bent on that number. I mean, it's just a conversational number. I don't know the math behind it as of today, but it is expensive.
Yeah, I mean, you're not talking a lot of people for $1 million.
Right.
You know, I'll speak about the U.S. I mean, you're talking a half a dozen people at most. If you're getting high quality individuals, and you're offering them a ton of equity, right? That's to get into that. So no, I think it's important for folks to understand that it is that 7-figure investment. You know, we try to obviously minimize that with what we're doing. So that's certainly something we like to you know, coach founders through, right? Like, the thing is it's saving time, and that's what we want to do. So if it's $1 million a year to get, and it's going to take you 2 years to get to 0 to 1 because you're going to go through the whole hiring process, mobilization, all of that.
New company, new
That's
work.
$2 million to get from 0 to 1, right? And so, can we get you to from 0 to 1 in 12 months or less? And can we do it at a much lower cost? But because we've done all that work up front,
right?
We've created the right plans, we have the right team members in motion, that will allow us to accelerate the timeline. And you know, you're not going through the cost of churn, the cost of change. And so that's where we'd like to help founders.
Yeah, I mean, as I just said, I love your theme, right? So I think we have spoken enough about the market piece, and I think we have some sense on that. Not often that happens that you have such a duo that sort of sits across a table with a founder and solves two major problems: new market, new money, right? You guys are solving almost for both of them. And so the new money part, in terms of helping transaction advisory, helping them, if they're expanding to international basis, it only makes sense to have an international investor as well on the cap table, right? That is something that you guys also sort of help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we want to be known as really the gatekeepers for all the amazing India innovation from on the investor front. So, you know, we certainly, you know, socialize. Obviously, it's no surprise. The India ecosystem is going to be, you know, second largest by 2030, right? So that's already known. What becomes a challenge for U.S. investors is really access. You know, knowing what companies are worth investing in. Do they have similar?
And I'm assuming if you evaluate a company to take to a market, that means you have your conviction.
Exactly, we're already inside.
Obvious sense
we're
to
already
sort of
inside, and that's what's attractive to investors. Is because we're not just slapping a few key stats and a logo and saying, here you go, hope it works out for you, right? You know, we can go in with a much more detailed story. We can certainly, you know, not only explain, but in some cases we help VCs validate go-to-market strategies. So those are really that knowledge and that experience allows us to really have a little bit more conviction when we're presenting startups to investors. So that's really where we hope to spend a little bit more time in the next coming year is really solidifying the base, the investor group in the U.S. And then being able to really, as through our work, be able to identify, you know, startups that we think are going to be very successful and create a very fruitful relationship.
Right. Leena, in your experience, when you talk to startups and say, look, I'm going to solve your market and money both problems, how has the reactions been? And I'm pretty sure they love the offerings that you guys have, and you have a very intense evaluation process in terms of before you onboard somebody, right? And you do come across many companies that sort of want the proposition that you guys want to sell to. But in your experience, how people have received this combination of a service that you guys have? What's your take?
I think in general, like I have not met a founder who has said we don't need this.
Of course,
they may not have chosen to work, you know, right now, or they may not be ready for it right now, but they've not said we don't need it. In fact, most of them, or I want to say all of them, have said that where have you been all my life? You know, because the problems that we speak to or the problems that we are trying to solve are problems that they face on a daily basis. So we've validated that. Yeah. We didn't create the business after, you know, asking these questions, and you know, so the validation came from us socializing and us discussing with founders. A lot of the times founders have come to us directly with those problems unintentionally, because not knowing that, you know, there was something, this is something that we were already working on. So the feedback has been great in terms of, we are definitely solving the right kind of problems. We are definitely solving the right two biggest items on a founder's mind, money and market.
Right.
It's what every founder keeps, how do you keep expanding, scaling, expanding into new markets, opening up new business verticals. So you just more and more revenue. How do you keep expanding into the market? And then how do you make sure that you're profitable? How do you make sure you're raising funds? Everything that's related to money, including acquisition of another company when you are trying to get into a new market. That's one of the best strategies to expand, right? You don't have to necessarily hire or move and all of that. That's one of the best strategies that you can do. So,
and those are more often bound to succeed. I personally believe if you have
absolutely
an international all-in equity or all-in buyout or an acqui-hire, whatever that you call that M&A to come in place, and that's in our conversation. I also have realized that you guys help very specific problem, which is say a marketing budget that you need for international expansion. That's very unique to me that I'm hearing. Right?
Yeah, no, that's because we know the cost and we understand the amount of investment. A lot of times, founders have not considered it, or they've maybe they budgeted a couple $100,000 and say, okay, I'm going to go into the U.S. with this.
Right.
So a lot of times when we go into discovery, and this is something that's come up a lot of folks will say, not in our budget, maybe next year. Or not in our budget, we're going through a fundraiser.
And that's when you lose the time.
And you lose a lot of time.
It's going to keep expensive.
Exactly. So what we want to do is really focus on whether that's debt or capital going in and raising specifically for this initiative. We're going to go into the U.S. This is what we believe it's going to cost for us to do 0 to 1. Let's go out and raise specifically and intentionally for this activity.
Wow. So, okay. So you're saying the capital that you raise, it may not be part of your complete round, but then if you have an expansion strategy in play, which obviously you guys will help the companies drive, and you will help them drive the pricing and the cost of doing something like that. I'm sure they will love it. They would want to do it. And if they have a problem where they cannot allocate the budget for this particular exercise and they don't want to lose time, they can approach you and say, yes, we'll be okay for you to sort of raise only that budget amount that is needed for us to go to international markets. We test it, and we should be able to drive results from. Is that what I'm getting that right?
That's exactly right.
That's a brilliant strategy. I think that saves a lot of effort from the risks that the founders have to take. They don't have to say no quickly. I mean, now they can sort of see a newer budget. And in general terms, it's just a working capital requirement, right?
Exactly.
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 That's
so
exciting.
What we want to do is when they go into the next formal raise, they're already in more markets. They've already shown revenue traction. So that's only going to help the valuation.
Absolutely.
So if you really think about this, focusing just on a GTM raise,
right,
it's going to actually exponentially produce such a high return because the next raise is going to require less equity that they have to.
And it'll be faster.
Exactly.
And maybe lesser because you have already budgeted the kind of. And it also, I think, in my opinion, it also gives you allocation to run nice companies. People who did not have allocated, or they couldn't get an allocation to a decent company at the time the round was open. Now that they have a capital requirement just for international market expansion, and it could be smaller, then they can write the check and get into the cap table. I think that's a brilliant strategy as well for an investor perspective, right?
Absolutely. And they know exactly where the money's going. They know they're going to get a return on it once it's successful.
And they can actually just navigate through the money. And they said, if you want to expand to the international market, we'll manage that. And we will give you a budget which we know that will work. And if the investor is from US, then he knows what's going to cost. So it's straightforward for the founder that they don't have to guess or second guess, because obviously you guys are strategizing for it, why it's going to cost the way it's going to cost.
Exactly. And we know how to present the investment opportunity.
And you have to present it. And I'm pretty sure if you are doing this, then you have a deeper skin in the game and you take it to a larger investor, or you go full blown with the transaction advisory when they raise a further or a larger round to get to a newer market.
By then, we already have the experience, the knowledge.
Yes, we would have spent a couple of
we're intimately engaged with the business, so we know everything. It's very easy for us to then, identify investors that share the vision, and that's obviously the most important thing. Do you have an investor that has the right community that has the right services to support growth, and they're not just money, right? And so that's where, once we take these intermediate steps, we're well poised and positioned to be able to do the next round successfully.
Right. So if let me try to sum this up a little more. So a founder in India should come to you with a few things. One, I want to go to an international market, right? I need a team who can really, really strategize a non-failing strategy for me. Come to you guys. I want money for my next raise from an international expansion perspective. I need a budget to expand to a different market. Come to you guys. Third, if I really need to have a larger transaction or have a series of round for my investment from a US or international investor perspective, come to you guys. That's pretty much the top three and the top problems that maybe a founder would want to sort of come and share with you, right? Am I getting that? That's quite interesting, guys. I don't think I've met a duo or a combo which sort of helps you both. This whole I keep looking at this statement here and there on sometime on LinkedIn or some of the conversations, right? Scaling fast versus scaling right, right?
Yeah.
First of all, which side are you guys on? So I'm sure scaling right is
Correct.
better, but come to think of it, I think you guys made the statement overall true now. You can scale fast because now you have capital, good strategy and everything, and you're scaling it right because now you're also giving them money and keeping it to the way it should be and not fail eventually doing that. So it used to be either or, but in your case, I think it's both now, and it's true in that. So which is also something that it's pretty amazing as well. Okay, let's also look at from the global standpoint, right? Today, if there is a SaaS company coming to you and obviously they're excited about, obviously we need a smaller round to do a global expansions and everything. Can you give me some sense of what kind of timelines do we look at in terms of from onboarding to starting to execution, that whole 0 to 1 journey? At what point do you really enter? What do you really promise to the startups? Some context on that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, 0 to 1, we typically, I'd say it's a 12-month journey.
Right.
Right. So we usually spend the first 30, 45 days really understanding the company, understanding the people, et cetera, product, obviously. Then we start to look at, outside in, right? So what's available in the market, what could we do differently and better? How do we make a little bit of noise when we go into that market? And then from there, we start really deploying some of those strategies and getting the word out and really starting engaging with the market. And then from there, we just try to get the motion and get things running the right way. Typically, it'll take 12 months to get to that point from start to finish. But towards the end, now we're starting to look at onboarding permanent resources and start rolling off of the engagement. So. That's typically when we're going into the market. Obviously, if we're having to do any type of capital infusion in order to support it, we could add about a couple months to that timeline.
Right. How do you see this in the overall journey?
Just, I think it's not just about 0 to 1 because we also work across maybe 1 to 5 or maybe, there are other up-marketing initiatives and adding new revenue streams, etc., which is where a startup is probably at a 15 million or maybe more, or maybe they have presence in the US, but now they want to launch their second product or start a new industry vertical, etc. So it really depends on that. So the timelines would change based on that as well, but it would be seen as kind of similar to what he was saying, 0 to 1 in that category.
Whatever point of time that you do realize that the company has to allocate a certain set of budget, I'm sure there's a lot of customers in your example who have those budgets to sort of take it to an international market. And if they don't, we come in and then find them.
The more mature companies have the budget. They're 15, 16 million. It's more of a transformation exercise than it is kind of the 0 to 1.
Setting up from scratch, because think about it, right? Up marketing is huge, right? Where startups will establish in the US, they will sell from India, and they will sell into small and medium enterprises. But now they want to go to the next level where they want to do enterprise sales. And so that is a transformation exercise. So the budgets are significantly higher, but since the market has been tested, it's a different kind of exercise altogether. And so the timelines will depend on that, investments will depend on that, the type of engagement or type of involvement that we exercise that we do with them will also change. So it's a completely different transformation exercise and not a setup.
Yeah, that sounds like that. Awesome. I think I understood, and I'm pretty sure a lot of value can be derived out of this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. It's a very common question that I ask people when we try to end our podcasts, right? So we've come to that stage. You've seen it all, I think, in the startup journeys, and now you are in that stint of your life where you are part of many others, and you will be working. What is your top advice for companies who are looking to expand into international market? Just keep it to one, but your top advice. What do you sort of say? Let's start with you. Startup who looking to expand to international markets. Leena Patil's advice. What is it?
Invest in people, processes, and invest at the right time.
Interesting. Time is Leena's favorite.
Yeah, that is the theme of a lot of her comments today. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
thank you. We will. I'm pretty sure that's where it is.
I mean, it's really just to invest right.
Okay.
So I think that's at the end of the day. We've talked about this already throughout the podcast as far as, what are the missteps, and a lot of that's driven by not making the right investments. And be thoughtful and know when it's not your time. That's okay too. Yeah. Just do it right.
Actually, I want to change mine because he said invest. So I'm going to change mine because, I think it was the same.
Yeah, you copied it. That's one of that.
Yeah. No. I think I missed this. I completely missed this. But I think one of the biggest thing is that this is an export. Right. When we are exporting technology to the US, right? Or any international market for that matter. I think what companies or founders miss is the importance of, making it company aspect of it, or from working styles, from, a lot of that. And that's where the magic really happens. So when you truly integrate,
and just like put a picture and code like.
No, you have to integrate. You have to fully integrate. And if you don't integrate, it's not going to work out.
I like your second attempt better than the first one.
Do you want to copy that again?
No, I'm good.
No, you keep his invest and make mine
culture
integration, cultural integration.
So I think I respect both of them. In the time that I've spent with both of you and thank you for sharing that knowledge with me, and what you definitely have changed my perspective of how to really scale to an international market. What I have learned, and if the same advice I had to give it to the startups after talking to you personally, is it doesn't have to be a spray pray or a hit or miss kind of a thing. There is a strategic way of doing it, and if you do it strategically, then you can actually scale faster, and you can actually scale right. And till today, I've never found a right mix of that. And I think with talking to you guys, I think that statement fits pretty well for scaling fast and scaling right. Can happen with ScaleUp. Yeah. Wow, I can quote that.
I was going to say, we can put that on the website tomorrow. Yeah. There you
Quotable quotes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Money in market is a great theme, guys. Appreciate you guys putting that on table for people, and I'm pretty sure it's desirable by a lot of startups. I really look forward for your journey in this segment. Keep me posted. I would love to see new stories, and let's talk about this again in US next time when we do a podcast in your office in US.
You're welcome anytime.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on.